We're only halfway into the information technology revolution. When I stand back 35 years and say, what am I surprised by? Computers are far cheaper and far faster than I ever would have guessed.
In 1977, when John Hennessy left the State University of New York at Stony Brook with his freshly minted PhD in computer science, his soon-to-be colleagues at Stanford University probably had no idea that a new wave was headed their way.
The best ideas in my mind always come from young people. They're the ones who are really ready to try something outrageous and different that hasn't been tried before.
At Stanford, enthusiastic and inquisitive Professor Hennessy quickly earned a reputation for encouraging innovation among his students, and in 1981, he pulled together a research team to focus on a new computer architecture aptly named RISC. Bucking the establishment, they posed a simple question.
Why should the architecture from mainframes and mini-computers naturally carry over and be best for this totally new approach to implementation? And I think that enabled us to stumble on an important set of discoveries in terms of tailoring architectures so that they better fit with compiler technology and better fit with pipelining as the primary way to make machines faster.
Hennessy was sure his team had struck gold.
We assumed, being good academic researchers, that people would just read our papers and just follow the key ideas because they seem so obviously good. And we were minding our own business when along came one of the important pioneers of the mini-computer era, Gordon Bell, who said to us, you have to take this technology and go start a company because otherwise it's too disruptive to the existing establishment. It changes their market and their perceptions too much. If you don't do it, it's just going to sit on the shelf.
Determined to show the commercial value of his team's work, Hennessy followed Bell's advice, took a sabbatical in 1984, and co-founded MIPS Computer Systems, now known as MIPS Technologies, to produce commercial RISC microprocessors.
Our business plan was between non-existent and simplistically naive, somewhere in that range.
But Gordon Bell's assessment rang true. RISC proved to be a breakthrough that is now found in nearly all of today's mobile applications, gaming consoles, and high-end servers. But in 1985, the fledgling technology still faced a lot of pushback.
I still remember one famous event. We're on a panel, and one of the skeptics on the panel, who was chosen as a skeptic about the RISC ideas, was asked, said, well, you know, Hennessy and his team just got $1 million to go start a company. Given that you don't believe in this technology, what should he do? He said, well, take it and go to Brazil.
But Hennessy stayed right where he was, in the burgeoning Silicon Valley, wondering why the tide turned so slowly.
Part of it was a lack of sufficient scientific understanding about what we had discovered. And it wasn't until several years later, a year or two after the company had started, that I finally read a key paper about the VAX that gave me the key scientific insight that I could explain why the RISC ideas were actually better. And then I had a good argument. I could go in and say, look, it's not just faster, but I can tell you why this approach is faster.
In 1986, having made his point, Hennessy took a backseat role at MIPS and returned to Stanford, where he rose through the academic ranks, first as chair of the computer science department, then as Dean of the School of Engineering, where he launched a 5-year plan that laid the groundwork for new activities in bioengineering and biomedical engineering.
We think computing's complicated, or engineering jet engines, or building bridges is complicated. Biology is much more complicated.
And since taking the reins as Stanford's president in 2000, Hennessy has not shied away from complicated problems.
We depend at the graduate level, particularly in science and technology, on importing lots of graduate students because we don't produce enough out of our K-12 system. Because if it's broken somewhere, it's broken deeply in science and math education.
The quest for knowledge is the key to progress, and the 21st century university, as Hennessy envisions it, really is a platform for the kind of cross-discipline collaboration that can derive the most public good from a good idea.
One of the wonderful things about this generation of students is that there are a lot of them that want to have a positive impact in some way on the world, and I think they're willing to consider a much wider range of avenues for doing that and think differently about who their allies might be. So a few years ago, a group went to Nepal and discovered that there was a very large infant mortality rate. There was inadequate prenatal care. babies would be born under birth weight, had a hard time maintaining body temperature. So they set out building a design for a different kind of incubator, and this is what they built. It's a miniature sleeping bag, to which you add in the back, you put a little pouch that has a paraffin-like substance in that can be dropped into a pot of boiling water, melts, and then will sustain the temperature of the infant for about 8 hours. And then you can pull it out again, drop it in a pot of boiling water. Works in parts of the world where you don't have electricity. Everybody can boil water anywhere because they have a wood fire. So they developed this initial prototype. Then they decided they wanted to go try and build a nonprofit company to try to build these. So they're over in India with a company called Embrace trying to do this. And they're trying to do this because it's going to change the world and make the world better.
The evidence of the impact of Hennessy's varied career is the recognition he has received from his peers. But despite all of the accolades and awards, he is one of those rare visionaries who can see beyond the curvature of the earth, but does so with deference and humility.
A university president is sitting in the catbird seat. You get to see lots of incredible things. You're surrounded by people who are leaders in their field. You're an expert only on a tiny sliver of the things going on in the university, and you certainly are completely outclassed in these other things.
Ultimately, it's not advocacy of a specific technology like RISC that sets Hennessy apart. It's his willingness to encourage curiosity among his colleagues and students, fostering the kinds of invention and discovery that can only happen through collaboration across disciplines, and especially between industry and academia.
One of the other new facilities we just completed is a new center for nanoscience and nanotechnology, and it's also multidisciplinary from the beginning, and most of the faculty in it are from either applied physics or electrical engineering, and this is really where the two come together and meet. And whether they're thinking about quantum devices, or they're thinking about photonics, or they're thinking about micromechanical devices, it's a whole new world out there, and thinking about how these kinds of technologies come together and what they might be used for, and getting enough fundamental understanding. I mean, if you think about the whole area of quantum computing and what role it could play, it's clear that we're probably still decades away from something that would be a practical alternative to conventional semiconductor-based computing mechanisms. But if we don't invest now to do the basic science and to do the technology, when we get to the end of the silicon era as we've known it, we won't have a viable alternative for computing. And I think we're going to have lots of people with interesting software that they want to create that's going to require a next generation of computing capability. And so it's important now that we're doing this kind of basic work exploring what the alternatives are in the post-silicon era.
Building new models for computing is John Hennessy's legacy and his challenge to the next generation of computer architects, and he simply chalks it up to his intellectual curiosity.
I've sometimes had to put myself in situations that had some uncertainty about how they were going to evolve over time, but it's provided me with an opportunity to grow and learn and to experience new things, which I think is one of life's great rewards.
Dr. John L. Hennessy, world-class computer architect, visionary leader, and recipient of the IEEE Medal of Honor.